Hello, guys. Once again, we are back to my YouTube channel, and I'm very fascinated with the massive support I'm getting from you guys, the subscribers, and also sending and sharing the videos we have been posting on our YouTube page. But I really want to share something with you that I'm really working on. I, for the past 2 months, I have been looking at the global south infrastructure, and I began to rethink about the word we all often attribute to the Europeans or Americans or those from Asian countries. I have been having this conscious thought about the word modernity. When we use the word modernity, we always ascribe it to the European concept, European ideology, bringing it down to Africa. Whenever we attribute modernity or African life or whatever that possesses the current sphere, we always attribute it to European indigenation, Europeans visibility in Africa. But I kind of shifted from that narrative to join Jonathan Silver in his argument about the infrastructure of South. That when we talk about modernity, when we talk about development, urban life, urban culture, relates, modernity actually started from Africa. And whatever the ordering literature, I used to call the European literature terror or ordering, that they ordered their literature in the concept and the narrative that Africa had no history. Just like Hegel wrote in 1956 about Africa, that Africa without the coming of the European is dark and has no history. What a very malicious statement about Africa. And a lot of people or a lot of European writers have, joined that banks of wagon. Example like the one that wrote Heart of Darkness, Conrad, wrote wrote massively on African as a dark continent. But I love the response of famous writer Chinua Achebe on rethinking Conrad's thought about this, his piece, Heart of Darkness. So what I'm actually doing is to look at slum development in Africa, how slum began to develop in Africa, the consciousness of the word slum, or currently people are using the word informal setting to classify slum. Um, Between 18th, 19th century, we ascribe it, or even the early 20th century, we target ghetto and or squatters. So some of these things attribute to the development they thought that Africa had. But for the past few weeks or past few months, I've been writing massively. I've been writing gently on slum development, particularly in a city that I grew up in Nigeria. And Onitsha, I grew up in Onitsha City. And all my life I have spent in Onitsha. I had my primary school in Onitsha, my high school in Onitsha, and my dad came to Onitsha precisely in 1974. That means this year marked 50th year my dad had lived in Onitsha. And I and my siblings grew up in Onitsha. So I know a little bit about Onitsha history. And currently, my PhD dissertation centers on Onitsha, looking from the lines of pre-colonial, colonial, and the future of Onitsha. That when we talk about Onitsha, one of the British settlement areas in Nigeria, there are a lot of history, there are a lot of setbacks. There are a lot of hidden narrative about this particular city that we all see today. And part of it is what I'm bringing to the space that I titled In the Heart of the Two-Hearted City. That there is a city in the two separate cities in our nature. I know it's a kind of some words are there. If there is a city and there is also a two city. The part of city I'm trying to explain is the slum city in the heart of the two city in our nature, where we have the native settlement and the settler settlement. Because some of us shy away from all these things, Onitsha has a very sharp demarcation. And in nearby future, the demarcation are still there. Of course, marbled in tandem with the colonial administration, colonial exposition about Onitsha. That we have some place we call the Enu Onitsha, strictly for the native, the Onitsha Adonidu. These are these places, map out streets are meant for strictly for the natives. And there are places we call Ani Onitsha, Ogbendi Igbo, Nwonyi Igbo side. These are places meant for the settlers or the migrants who came to Onitsha. Principally, these migrants migrated to Onitsha because of the colonial infrastructure. Yeah, that came out as a result of colonial influence and decline in subsistence farming. With the rise of schools, police station, markets, there tend to be a shift of narrative, a shift of financial post, a shift of what people had aspired to be their source of income because of the policies, the programs of the colonial administrators, even people that were often, participating in substance farming. Some people were jailed. So most people kind of moved into commercial farming, of course, to tap into the grace of the colonial masters in terms of money and kind of exchange policies. But my discussion today is not centering on the narrative of commercial or subsistence farming. My idea today is on slum development in our nature. That before 1857, when I'm talking about 1857, this is a kind of exposition, a kind of influence, a kind of penetration the Europeans navigated and sailed through the eastern Nigeria, of course, through the colonial missionaries, and went deep into the hinterland of Igbo land, which Onitsha was an entrepôt because of River Niger influence, had to, sift through into all parts of Igbo land. But interestingly, the narrative of Bishop Ajayi Crowther and his theme in Onitsha saw that these people were living in non-gated environment. They were actually living peacefully. They were living separately, and there was no atom of slum. That even in the narrative on the journal books of Sean and um, Bishop Ajayi Crowther, they never recorded a, a type of decimated environment. In fact, Reverend Samuel Ajayi Crowther said the city was strategic for the European missionaries' evangelism. So my argument is that the writings of the European narrative about Africa and the conditions that Africa today had over 1.5 billion people living in slums. I'm wondering the narrative and how these slums developed Was it there before the colonial people came? If it was not there from the narratives and the archival sources and the letters and synod reports of Bishop Ajayi Crowther, why is it so that the Eurocentric writings about Africa depicts Africa as death, the people living in slums, and people that are dirty? So this is what I'm trying to narrate historically and using an ethnographic survey to exemplify that Onitsha City, which is mostly like in all parts of African city today, has no concept or had no idea or had never witnessed slum until the mid 19th centuries. That whatever we call slum today, or whatever we call informal setting, in the margins of every city in urban area in Africa today, or in the heart of the city, started developing as a response to colonial cage, to colonial influence, to colonial monopoly of African financial wealth and African resources. And because Africa now saw these urban areas as a way to survive, there seems to be migration. Of course, we all agree with the narrative of the theorist and Ernest Ravenstein, that push and pull factor makes people to migrate. People began to migrate into Onitsha City because of the pull factor like main market Onitsha, pull factor like DMGS, the first grammar school in Igbo land, pull factor like the EN hospital, pull factor like police station, pull factor like banks. These were pulling people who were strategically in rural areas. But because of the policies and programs of the colonial administrators, they have to migrate into these places for them to have a sense of belonging. And having strategically migrated into this space, the colonial masters did not care about housing plan. Onitsha till today has no housing plan. People were just segregated. The white people were living in what we call the waterside area. The native people were living there in Enu Onitsha, while the settlers were abandoned in Nwonyibu area to survive whatever they could do with their life. So these settlement patterns began to trend, because people were living only close to their relatives and natives. They wanted people that had the same language, the same setting, the same instruction. And there tend to be development of housing patterns, housing structures without rebook from government. And this slum development started aggravating, started developing, started its growth because they wanted to survive. So I'm really working on some of these things to pull it out there. But in this short narrative, I want you to pull it up by putting on my comment section what you think about slum development, what you think about the ghetto area in your vicinity, in your place. What do you think that gave rise to slum or slum areas or squatters or ghettos or informal setting in your own locality, whether in Nigeria, in Ghana, in Kenya, cut across the globe? Let us discuss about the infrastructural south in the global south. Let's actually debate on the slum development, whether it came as a result of African prehistory or as a result of colonial influence in Africa. Leave your comment section as we debate in this idea of slum development. Thank you so much. And please subscribe and share the YouTube link across all board, your friends, your family, and I hope to hear from you shortly.